Doesn't it shrink in the cold? Doesn't metal shrink in cold? We'll put it outside.
I'll tell you what shrinks.
You can probably squeeze it out.
Yeah.
It's just gonna make your breath like nice and fucking fresh.
It's for breath.
It's for breath. Read it. They're called hustle drops.
All right, I'll take it on camera. Give it to me, baby.
Just one drop. Just one drop.
This episode sponsored by Hustle Drops. Are you sick of bringing bad breath to your game? Fix it on up. That's
He started laughing.
You fucking with me? No, it's just a lot. It's fucking super peppermint.
I love it.
Hey,
I love
It
it.
feels good.
I'm fucking wired already.
Fucking idea.
What's up, man?
Peppermint?
Nice to meet you, Jake.
That's probably a good
One
idea.
drop. That's all you're
What
gonna
do I
do.
do?
Woo! Oh shit.
It's a lot of
Myself a little cappuccino cup from a little Everett.
Oh, you took
I let
over.
her-
How did you walk out with that?
Like this, like I'm a friend. Goodbye today.
Arrivederci.
Where'd you get that?
Thank you at breakfast this
Diner.
morning. Everybody diner.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to call you. I wanted you to come and meet us for breakfast.
Question before we start the pot. Well, you're fucking tall. I can't even ask you this question.
What?
If for every inch you grew, you lost an inch on your penis, would you change anything, or would you say the same?
Only be 2 inches taller.
All right, and we're gonna start shooting now. We're doing this. You ready? All right, Tony, you go ahead.
Is this good here or what?
Yeah, it's gonna pick up your voice. You really don't have to talk as much as these ones.
So, Tony, Capoletti, Zach Dingy,
The normal.
you're the host. I'm the co-host.
This is
We
correct.
got Jake Garay in the building.
The
Am I
big
saying
man.
that correctly? Jake
Yep.
Garay.
You got
Garay.
Okay.
it. Garay.
Garay. Okay, Jake Garay.
Everybody in my family says it differently, so.
Siri says it.
However
when I
you
say-
want to call it.
When I say
Gary.
call Jake Garay, it's like Jake Garay.
Jake.
Siri
Jake
puts a little
Garay.
accent on it. Puts a little accent on it.
got
But
the
if you
British
guys don't know Jake, he's a local realtor here in Hudson Valley. He's going to give his story and everything in a little bit. We're going to get into kind of the topic of the market today, real estate, buying real estate, investing. And Jake's, weren't you like number one in Hudson Valley?
Our team is, yeah.
Number one in Hudson
what's your
Valley,
team?
these guys.
The Blake Shaw team, Berkshire Hathaway.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Awesome. Shout out to them.
Yeah,
Doing it big.
you
Glad
know
we all
it.
got here safe today, too, by the way.
Yeah, it's
I was kinda
snowing
worried.
out
It was
today here in
snowing
New
like
York.
a mother. I
Out
was
of nowhere, I
sideways
feel like.
On the way here. Where'd you come out?
From LaGrange.
LaGrange. Okay.
Yeah.
So you live in LaGrange.
Well, I'm in Wappingers, but I was at my office this morning.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you had a meeting this morning. All right. Well, I think the appropriate way to start it is, let's get some background on you.
Yep.
Where'd you go to school?
Yeah.
Education. Spill the beans.
So, born and raised in the Hudson Valley. So, moved up to LaGrange from Mayapack when I was like 4 years old. Went to Arlington my entire life. I did go to prep school for 2 years in high school and then ended up coming back. And my main focus growing up was always in sports. So I played soccer, hockey, and baseball growing up.
Oh my God! What a waste, bro! Basketball. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that out loud. My bad. No
So-
basketball,
You look like
bro.
an athlete, bro. You look
No,
like
you're definitely an athlete.
a big dude.
Yeah, I mean, my whole family is very athletic.
Yeah.
So we just were a big sports family. My dad had us, playing all different types of sports when we were 3 years old. I started playing
What
hockey.
was your main?
Hockey.
Yeah, you look
Yeah.
like a big hockey.
So I, once I got to high school, I started focusing mostly on hockey and playing a lot of travel hockey all across the country. And then that was part of why I went to prep school for 2 years. So I went to Salisbury Prep in Connecticut. So I went there, ended up coming back because I had an opportunity to play some junior hockey with a coach who I had a good connection with. So I did that. After high school, so in hockey, you don't go directly to college most of the time. It's not like most sports where they do a lot of junior hockey, which is essentially like a bridge between high school
Right,
and
it's like your path that you
Exactly.
take to get into pro.
well, yeah, and it depends on, American hockey now is much more advanced than it was even,
Back
say,
then, yeah.
10 years ago. So college hockey is a really good avenue to go to the NHL, whereas it usually was primarily just like major junior hockey, a lot of guys from overseas, and then some American guys. It was very small compared to what it is now. So I did that. I played junior hockey for a year, and basically my whole intention of pursuing that was just to go play college hockey and then see where it went. And I just got burnt out. I decided it wasn't something I really wanted to do. It became more about, it was more of a job than it was I was playing for like the wrong reasons.
Yep.
And then once I decided not to pursue hockey anymore, I decided that, for college, it didn't really make a ton of sense because I've always been more of an entrepreneurial type of person. I come from an entrepreneurial background. My father has owned his own business for about 40 years. And so for me, it didn't really make a lot of sense to go and spend $250,000 or $300,000 on an education and, put myself in a lot of student loan debt. To
This guy's ahead of the curve, people.
That was about 3
Is this
episodes
a-
ago.
Yeah.
is this a pro or anti-college podcast?
Depends.
Depends.
Watch
We
the
have
podcast,
yeah.
all right?
Th-
Don't
like
ask-
3
don't come
episodes
here
ago,
asking
we had a
those
whole
questions.
hour.
We answered every single one of those questions. It's on the episode.
All right, so I'll have to go
Send
back
me the link.
and check the.
Listen, bro.
Check that out.
He tried college twice and left, and I tried college for like 3
You know
months.
what they say,
and left,
third
so
time's
there
a
you go.
charm.
Yeah. Well, I'll never find out. I promise.
So yeah, I mean, I basically decided, you know what? Why don't I, more so than anything, bet on myself? And look,
Yeah.
my opinion is really that if you're not going to do something specialized, so if you're not going to become a doctor, a lawyer, something that really requires a degree in that field, like I was going to go for business, and it's like, what are you going to study in business? If anything, you're really just going for the relationships that you make and the people that you meet.
Yes.
And so for me, I really decided, you know what, I'd rather invest that type of money in myself in different avenues, whatever it may be, education, opportunities, investing in business,
Yep.
And that's it. You don't have to watch the episode now. That's all I said.
all right, so there's the
Pretty
spark
much.
notes on it.
Yeah.
30
Cliff
seconds.
notes.
That was the end.
Yeah,
Unless
so-
I need a link.
I decided, so I was working in the family business. So my family's background is in real estate. My dad's been a builder, general contractor for a very long time. He's been a real estate investor. And my focus was more so, originally I was working with him on the jobs, which is how I gained some construction experience. And then I decided very quickly that I didn't want to do that anymore, mainly
So
because...
you were working with a tool belt.
Exactly.
And you weren't for that.
I mean, I enjoy working, but it's not something that I looked at the long term and I said, it just wears on your body. It's a
Yeah.
long
Dude,
day.
it's
It's
bad.
exhausting.
Absolutely.
By the time you get home every day, you don't have the energy to go and do the types of things that you want to do to set yourself up for the
Yes.
future. And so I decided, you know what, I'd rather work with my brain than with my hands,
Yes.
and kind of try and work based on, myself.
Yep.
And so then I took more of a kind of administrative position where I was working in the office, kind of running the back end of things, marketing, things like that. And long story short, I got into real estate more so because my father was like, look, I've had a very difficult time building a good relationship with a broker who really, finds me good deals, finds me good opportunities. Because in real estate, it's all about who you know more than anything. It really is a relationship-based business. And so he said, why don't you go get your license and, kind of dip your toes and see what you think of it. And then we can kind of get some inside information, find out what's going on in the market.
How old were you
things
when
like
that happened?
So I was 20 when I started the course. And by the time I was licensed, I was 21.
Okay. Oh, so still young though.
Young.
Yeah.
Wow.
Still
So the average real estate agent from the National Association of Realtors is a 57-year-old
Yeah.
woman by demographics.
Yep.
So it was a little bit of a different, it kind of
heard
stuck
that.
out a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my foray. I started off very casually, just kind of, doing that. And then eventually I said, you know what, I'd really like to try and, give this a shot and do it full time, which is what I did after about a year. And it's kind of,
And now how old are you?
I'm 27. I had to think
you've been
about
doing it
that.
for
You
6
love-
years
You're
straight.
asking the tough questions.
Yeah, I told you. I'm trying to stump you today. And you love it.
I do. Yeah. I honestly, I mean, to me, it's not a job. It's something that, because I'm interested in what we're doing,
Right.
it's a great opportunity to just get out. You meet a lot of different people from all different walks of life, and you're just tied into the community. You get to hear about the things that are going on. You hear about the projects. You hear a lot of different stories, which are really interesting. But it's just a lot of different opportunity and a lot of different people that you can kind of meet, and it just opens the door to so many different things.
And it matches
Because,
your personality type.
well, yeah, exactly. And
You
I
don't
think
look like a tool belt. You
No.
look like some guy who you talk to and you go to building relationships. I met you, twice?
Yeah.
You have a pretty good relationship.
Absolutely.
already.
No, for sure. And that's what I enjoy. I mean, it's nice to be able to sit down, do something like this, get to know each other, find out how, because real estate fills a need for everybody, right? Whether it's in business or whether it's in, just in your everyday life, everybody needs a place to live. So it's really something that applies to 100% of the population. So it's a really cool thing because you do meet all different types of people. Whereas when you're in specific industries, sometimes you're only surrounding yourselves with, one type of person or a couple of
Yeah.
different types of
Yeah, it's
people.
true.
So
Right.
it's just cool to meet different types of entrepreneurial minded people and having a background in investment. I mean, that's kind of the piece that's really I'm the most passionate about is the investment side of things, coming from that background, just because I feel so strongly about the opportunities that it presents, especially for young people like ourselves.
Right.
Yep.
Now,
But
what
yeah.
type of investments exactly are you into?
So, from a real estate perspective, I mean, we look at basically everything. So they could be flip opportunities, so just buying, renovating and then selling.
Yep.
They could be long-term holds. Obviously, my philosophy is when you're really young, it's an accumulation game, right? So you're trying to buy as many things as possible.
quickly as possible.
Exactly, because the long-term benefits for real estate are in the the holding of it over time, the accumulation of it, because you're getting it
for itself. Build
exactly
that equity without you coming out of pocket at all.
Exactly, because really, what happens is once you acquire the property and then you get it to wherever you need it to be to feel like it's stabilized, the tenants are going to be paying your mortgage payment and all of your bills, even if you're not making any monthly cash flow. You're still building a savings account for down the road.
Yep.
So the more
Burr method.
That's in today's market. If you want to talk about the market, that's the best opportunity, right? Is if you can find
100%.
properties that require a lot of work, and that you have the capability of doing that. That's the best way to go, because the market has come up so much in the last 24 to 36 months that it's really difficult to compete on market. I mean, we've seen it just out looking at properties. I mean, the last property that we put that offer on was like 12 offers on one property.
And we put an offer for like 45,000 over asking, and still
Yeah.
lost.
And from my experience, so me and my brothers got into this game, and we wanted to do Burr from the start.
Yep.
Which, for anyone who doesn't know, it's when you buy a property, you renovate it, you rent it, you refinance, and repeat. So it's called Burr, right? So you pretty much buy the property, hold it, make money off it, let it pay for itself over a long-term period. Back in, I think we bought our first one in like 2012, and we got this building, 2-unit for I think $130,000, and it was rented. It was a shithole, but it was rented. Right?
It was livable.
Yeah, so
Barely.
We got the tenants out, rented it, whatever, renovated it. We just went and looked at another one, same fucking deal, except it wasn't rented. One of the apartments was renovated and rented. Then the upstairs destroyed, like demoed. Dude's asking $315.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yep.
It's crazy.
What the fuck?
It's
You can't even justify that.
Well, it's a couple of different things that have happened, right? So you look at 2008, not artificially. I mean, it was a real crash. But anytime you have a correction, human nature is to go to both extremes, right?
Yep.
So in 05, 06, and 07, prices were so far beyond what they should have been. But then the overcorrection of that was that for years, real estate was undervalued.
Yep.
It was never as cheap as it was supposed to be, and it was never as, it was never worth as much as the prices were in 05, 06, and 07, but it was never as cheap as it should, as the pricing was.
Yep.
It was artificially, lower. Yep. And so you're coming out of that, and in the Hudson Valley, we really saw the bottom of the market in like 2011 and 2012. So you hear a lot about 2008 because that was when the stock market crashed, and it happened so quickly, right? 6 to 12 months, 25, 30%. Exactly. I mean, you don't. It was the largest real estate crash that the United States has ever seen. I mean, you don't see that in real estate because the common, the big mistake that people made was that, real estate always goes up.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like this one idea that kind of was the base of this entire thing. Yeah. And then you had fraud, and you had so many different, things going on. But after that, when pricing started to come back around 2012, which is when you bought your first property, right? So you probably bought right at the bottom. And then you look at interest rates back then, and interest rates even back then were lower than they were today.
Yeah, they were nice.
Or I'm sorry, higher than they were today. That's how low interest rates.
Well, I got a FHA.
Well, that's so but what was the rate on the first property that you bought?
Oh, probably
High twos?
3.7.
3.7. Yeah. So even today, an FHA loan, you're looking at 3.125. So you look at the market today versus then, and you're in the lowest of the low, and the rates were still higher than they are today.
Yeah.
So you look at that, and you look at just the fact that, the whole entire landscape of like, really the working landscape is all changing, right? So there's a couple of different factors at play, right? You look at COVID, and everybody thinks that COVID caused the entire real estate market to go crazy.
Yep.
But it's, talking on a localized level here in the Hudson Valley.
Yep.
The trends that we've seen throughout COVID were already happening,
really?
Right? So
that's interesting because I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah. So
you don't think this is all?
No.
Really?
No, not at all. So, and the reason being, and look, there's a caveat to that, right? People hear that this is, meant to happen or it was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a couple of different pieces. There's nuance to that conversation because first and foremost, it took what probably would have happened over maybe a 5, 6, 7, 10-year period, and it did it in 24 months.
Okay, so that is the effect.
It accelerated it.
Yes, okay.
So
it had an effect then.
it did have an effect for sure, but it wasn't the cause of what's going on.
It was just what was going to happen. But
It was going to happen over a longer period of time.
Okay, so COVID sped the process.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because in 2015, 2016, we already saw this trend, and there were outliers, right? So really progressive companies. We are more so a commuter market, right? So we don't have massive employment base in Fortune 500 companies here. Historically, we had IBM. That was it.
Right.
We're starting to see some companies coming in, especially in manufacturing and distribution, but mostly people who are working here, they commute, right? They commute to Lower Westchester, they commute to Rockland County, New Jersey, and then obviously New York City, which is really the majority of where people.
Traffic is so lovely in the morning.
Exactly. So you look at that, and what was happening was around that time, the progressive companies were starting to say, hey, you can work remotely 1 day a week or 2 days a week. And so that opened to the door for some people who were willing to make the sacrifice to say, look, if I'm not commuting to Manhattan 5 days a week and it's 3 days a week, then that means I can maybe work 3 days a week and then be home 4 days a week.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So now you can spend $500,000-$600,000 and get a gorgeous 3,000-4,000 square foot house on a couple of acres with an in-ground pool. Or you can go down to Lower Westchester, have a 40-minute commute into Midtown, and pay $600,000 for 1,400 square feet.
Right. Box with a window.
Exactly.
And no acres.
Exactly.
Yeah, nothing.
A half
No
a lot.
privacy, and it's just a lot of congestion.
Yeah.
And so those people were starting to buy up here. I mean, in 2017, 65% of sales in Dutchess County, over 400,000, were to buyers from out of the area.
Wow.
Really?
So that was in 2017. That's so saying 6 out of every 10 or 7 out of every 10 buyers then were coming from out of the area.
Yeah, so it was already.
It was already pretty significant. And then what happened is right around 2017, 2018, we also had inventory constraints, right? So there's two big factors in the whole market right now, which is inventory and interest rates. And they're kind of fueling this entire thing. Because as interest rates remain low, money's cheap. Right? So it's like if you can get interest rates at 3%, even 4%, I mean, we just saw inflation at 6 and 7%.
Yeah,
so
that
you're
is
talking
stupid
about
cheap right now.
free money,
Yeah.
right?
You're
The
more
bank
than
is
free.
losing money.
Yeah,
The
more
bank
than
is
free.
losing money on your loan.
Literally.
That's really what it comes down to. And so that makes purchase prices go up because it's like buying a car. When you go and sit with a car salesman, what does he ask you? What do you want your payment to be?
Yeah.
He doesn't
Sell
say,
on
what do you
payment.
want to pay for this car? He says, what do you want the payment to be?
What
And they
can you
say,
afford monthly?
$400 a month. And then he knows, okay, well, I can buy, I can sell you this car for this amount, and it's going to be a 3-year, financing or 4-year financing, and the price goes up every single time. And
Dude,
eventually,
Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, eventually they end up trying to sell you the 6 or 7 year
That's exactly what I was going to say.
term because the payment's the cheapest.
Dude, I was looking at an Audi R8 and for like supercars and things, bro, they'll do like 10-year payments.
Oh, yeah.
They're like, bro, just pay $500 a month for 10 years.
They're actually doing 40-year mortgages now in some cases.
What?
And you got to remember,
That's
historically,
Is that realistic?
no. I mean, and
for
look,
an investment property, maybe.
it just depends on everybody's, like, there's no black and white in anything, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
there's
application.
exactly. You got to look at the situation and weigh all the option and just run an analysis on what you're going to do.
Yeah,
But
if you're buying
is it realistic that somebody's going to live in the same house for 40 years?
No
Hell no.
shot.
No, but if you're buying a commercial property and you want to build a huge business, why not have the overhead a lot lower by
Exactly. Well, and that's why they have interest-only mortgages on commercial properties.
Yeah.
I mean, you start talking about commercial properties, and it's like all bets are off, right? Anything is on the table because it's all just a business decision.
Right.
It's just opportunity cost. If you have $1 to invest, it's where can I get the best return for this dollar?
Yeah.
And that's it. And however you have to structure that deal to make the best return is what you do. So when you look at basically buying, right? When you go to the mortgage broker, they don't say, hey, you can buy, the first step is not you can buy $300,000 house or $400,000 house. They look at your debt to income ratio. So they factor in what your income is every single month. And then they look at what debt you owe, car payments, credit cards, student loans, all of that. And they're going to factor a payment of X. So let's say you can afford a $2,000 a month payment. Well, that $2,000 a month payment is a factor of what the price is, the taxes are,
Yep.
the insurance on that house, and the interest rates.
Yeah.
So if interest rates are really low, you're paying a lot less interest. As interest rates go up, your amount of purchasing power goes down, because as interest rates go up, that cost of the money is becoming more and more expensive. Right. So it eats away at what principal payment you're making every single month. So if you were, at 3%, and these are just arbitrary numbers, you'd have to run the math, but if at 3% you can buy a $300,000 house, at 4% you might only be able to buy a $275,000 house. Right. And so as interest rates continue to rise, or what happened was as interest rates were decreasing, purchasing power was becoming greater and greater, and then you have inventory constraints. So you have so historically Americans would move every 7 to 10 years. Yep. Right now it's much more than that. It's 15 plus years people are moving on average. Really? Homeowners. The reason being is so many people purchased in 04, 05, 06, and 07, and then values cratered. And until 2019, 2020, and really for some people 2021, your house was worth less or the same as what you paid for it when you purchased it.
Right, so you gotta hold it.
Exactly. Or another thing that people did, they built.
Wow.
Yeah.
A lot of people built during that time. There was a massive building boom, right?
Yeah.
And so you got this house for, say, $400,000 in 2004, and now you're looking at the market and you're saying, okay, my house might be worth $550, right? But what am I going to buy for? What am I buying?
Yeah,
Where am I
it's
going?
Yeah.
Right? So what's happening is now prices have gone up so much that unless you're leaving the county, the state, and heading down south to a more affordable market, or you have to move for work, or you have this massive house, right? 6,000 square feet, 7,000 square feet, whatever it is, and you're downsizing, where are you moving?
Yeah.
So people aren't selling.
Oh.
If you owned a raised ranch that, was 2,000 square feet and you've been there for 15 years, yeah, it's worth a lot more money, but what are you going to buy?
Right.
Because
what are you going to turn it? How does it make sense?
Exactly. If you live in the southern part of Dutchess County, your 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom ranch that's 1,500 square feet is worth $350,000, $400,000, right? But what do you buy if you sell that and you downsize? What are you buying?
And even trying to rent for a little bit, dude. Rentals.
Rents have gone up even more than pricing on a percentage basis.
So you can't even move out and wait in a rental.
I mean,
money.
look at Poughkeepsie.
Yeah,
right?
I haven't adjusted my rents, so it looks
no.
like I need to.
But I mean, I bought my property in 2020. My rents are now $200 below market value in a year and 5 months. In July of 2020 to
jump,
January.
What are the rents? What are the rents?
They're paying $1,400 a month.
Dude, that's fucking in 30, 40. That's like
for a 1-bedroom.
That's a 20% increase.
For a 1-bedroom.
That's a 20% increase to $1,600.
And I actually have tenants who have come to me and said, "We'll pay you $1,625, and we'll move in to move into my building." And they're like, "We'll move in right away, but I don't have any vacancy to fill those apartments." Right. But that just shows you where the rents have come. Yeah. I mean, Poughkeepsie in 2015, you could rent a 2-bedroom for $900, $950, and so but again, this is all getting into what drives these things. When you don't have evictions and you don't have the normal turnover, right? Yeah. People aren't moving. Yeah. If you have a 2-bedroom apartment and you're leased at $1,400 a month, are you going to move when that apartment is now $1,800 a month? No. Hell no. So you're not getting the normal turnover.
That's a very interesting case of cause and effect.
The whole market is a cycle right now. And what's happening is, historically, you used to be able to build yourself out of inventory constraint. But when building materials are 40%, 50% up, and there's no vacant land to build on, and then on top of that, you also look at municipalities taking 12, 24, 36 months in some cases, if you're looking at large-scale developments, just to get the approvals done. Yep. Who knows what the market looks like 3 years from now?
That needs to be fixed. I hate this.
It's the worst thing in the world.
They're so sluggish, and they just hold everything.
Everything takes forever.
Get your shit together, please.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to be listening.
You should just run for office.
Yeah, no shot.
That's a dirty game.
I can't.
Dude, hell no. So wait, let me ask you then. So you're talking about this. That's been the previous 24 to 36 months. What's short term in the next 12 to 18 months? Are you thinking it's gonna change at all? Because I know the market's kind of starting to dull down a little bit. Or are you thinking it's gonna be same concept?
There's a couple of it's tough because look, nobody has a crystal ball, right? There's so many things that could happen that we're completely speculating on. You have massive inflation. We just printed more money. You know, what did they say? I think it's 40%. Exactly.
Right now is just printed in the last.
Well, listen, and it's not 6.
that.
They think
Insane.
the last time I said, I think it said 6.2 or 6.7% inflation this year.
If that's the number they're telling you, it's much higher.
Dude, it's at least 10%.
Exactly.
At minimum, it's double.
I mean,
digits.
we see it in our everyday life, right?
Dude.
So you know what's going on. But point being is, first off, we're not going to see a massive influx of inventory.
Yeah.
It's just not possible.
No one's built.
People think that there's this wave of foreclosure inventory coming. And the issue there is, first and foremost, if you're upside down on your home, how? Right? Because what year did you buy your home in where it's worth less? Unless you became so far behind and then you've had interest accumulation and things like that. And look, there are individual situations where things like that will happen. But on the grand scheme of things, if you look at the numbers, the vast majority of people who did end up asking for some form of forbearance during COVID are no longer in forbearance, have caught up.
Yeah.
So there is no massive influx of foreclosure inventory coming. Right. So that's number one. Number two, the building, like we just talked about, that's at least 2 to 3 years out if we can even find those developments and that land to build.
Yep.
Yeah.
The short term, looking at 2022, the question is, where do interest rates go? I fully anticipate that we're going to see interest rates close to 4%
Go up.
or more. Yeah. And there's also two conversations here, right? Because you look at the investment side of things, which is something that we're all in every single day.
Yep.
And then you look at the regular kind of single family market,
which is most people.
Exactly, which is what most people are going to be more interested in.
Yeah.
The reality is that most large organizations are forecasting appreciation in the range of 3 to 5% every single year for the next 5 years.
Of properties.
Correct.
Okay.
So real estate is relatively stable. We're not going to see 10, 15, 20% appreciation because, let's face it, that's unsustainable.
Yeah,
it's like if the stock market goes up by 40% every single year. Eventually, you just reach a point where it's going to crash, right? Yeah. So it's unsustainable.
That's a different story.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And that's a whole nother conversation.
Well, here's another thing I want to bring up real quick before we get too far off of it. And we're talking about the market pretty much being short on supply.
Yep.
And you said part of that was because you couldn't evict people, which was a big thing during COVID. Right.
And that's now over.
Didn't they just pass a bill?
New York passed a bill, didn't they?
So it's not that they passed the bill; they let it expire.
Okay. So
they let it expire as of
explain
January
that to-
15th.
okay, yeah.
So what was happening was it was a temporary pause on evictions that was not temporary. Ended
People
up
could be
lasting.
Oh,
in
yeah.
their
Way
apartment,
longer than a
not
thought.
Exactly.
paying any money to their
Correct.
landlords.
Correct.
Which was
And New York's
hurting landlords.
already.
Oh, I know landlords
very-
who are owed hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's crazy.
And
How long
the,
did this go on for?
so it was filed in March of 2020, and it just expired in January 15th of 2022.
8
So it was
months.
almost 2 years. 2
Oh,
years,
2
2020.
years. Oh my God. Yeah.
So you're
Holy
talking
shit.
about 20 to 20.
That's fucked.
But what's crazy is, and what's really interesting for the investment side of things is two conversations. Number one, there was a tremendous amount of landlords who wanted to sell their buildings and couldn't. Because as a buyer, are you going to buy something sight unseen?
Yeah.
Some buyers will, but you're going to want a significant discount versus the market value. So let's say you have a building that's worth $300,000. If you can't get access to that building, then every investor who would be willing to buy it is going to price in their risk, right? They're
Yeah.
going to say, how much is this building worth if I have no idea what the inside looks like? If I can't even
You
see.
have to
Worst
go
case
by
scenario.
Worst case scenario.
Exactly.
Everything's destroyed.
So what do you knock off? $75,000, $100,000?
Yeah.
And then the landlord says, okay, do I take a haircut and sell for a massive loss, or do I continue to eat the loss on my rent?
Yeah.
So
Jesus.
this was going on. Now that's over. Evictions can happen. And what's crazy is during that entire process, there was no mechanism. So what common sense would tell you was, look, the idea was you were supposed to have a hardship due to COVID. If you had a hardship due to COVID, that you would have relief from your rent. You wouldn't have to pay your rent. Perfectly normal thing. It's a reasonable
It's
thing.
not even normal. That's fucked up. The government's like, yeah, here's your handout.
Well, no.
We're gonna fuck your landlord.
The government is
You're
the one that
welcome.
shut down the country that then tells
Yeah.
you, oh, you're not going to work.
Right.
Now let me give you the
Here,
handout.
Well-
back.
here's free living on this guy.
Exactly.
Enjoy. What?
And then what the problem was that they continued to kick the can down the road, right? They
Yeah.
didn't look at saying, okay, who can we help, right? How do we provide stimulus in a way that we can help the people who need it. But the problem with any program like that, as we all know, is that you get people who take advantage of it, right? And so what happens is, what's crazy is you would think common sense would tell you, look, you have a hardship, you lose your job because of COVID, right? You go on unemployment. Well, first of all, there's another conversation to be had about if you're receiving additional income for being on unemployment. I think the idea was that you were supposed to pay your rent, right? But that money wasn't going.
They
to
got
the
extra
landlord.
money and then
didn't
lower
pay their
expenses.
rent.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can't trust anybody with extra money who doesn't.
Correct. So then they had so at the base of it they said, which is crazy. They say, Zach, you own a property, right? Your tenants are not paying you rent. They have a hardship. You have to prove that they don't have a hardship. They didn't have to prove their hardship. You had to prove their hardship.
So ass backwards.
How the hell are you going to do
That's
that?
so ass backwards. Because then it becomes, so it's one thing if they have to prove their hardship. Then you're actually working for that money to some degree.
Right.
You're at least going to prove it.
Exactly.
But now it's the opposite way. That turns
You have to
into
prove
like
them
a court
wrong.
case.
It's exactly
It's
what you had to do.
bullshit.
You literally had to get an investigator, something, call their employers, find out if they're working. Who the hell knows?
Spend more money to get the money you're losing rather than.
Oh, and by the way, when they passed the laws back in, I believe it was 2019, you are not allowed to collect anything in an eviction proceeding besides late rent. So attorney's fees,
All that
rent
extra
payments,
shit.
all
So
that
it's not
stuff
even worth it
is
to
no
do.
longer able to be collected. So we can have another conversation about how you can collect that.
Was that
because
federal?
there is a way. No, New York
Okay.
State only.
Thanks, New
There's
York.
a whole narrative here. This is
Yeah.
a chain of everything's tied together. Nothing doesn't happen, everything
Yep.
happens for a reason.
Yep.
So they did have the ERAP program, which was the emergency emergency relief. I don't even remember what the acronym stands for.
Yep.
But essentially it was rent relief that tenants could file and would be paid directly to the landlord, which was good. So
From
I know
the state.
from the state. So it was federal money allocated to the
fair.
states. This was the big controversy when Cuomo was in office because New York, despite being the state with, I believe, the highest amount of people not paying rent in terms of the dollar amount, they were allocated the most amount of money besides maybe California. They were the last ones to actually distribute the money. So it was just like another way of screwing the landlords, right? Because it was like, oh, we've got the money. We can get you the money. We have the ability to get you the money, but we're going to wait 3 or 4 months, right? So this all went on. Wow. And then you could file, either the landlord could file on behalf of the tenant or the tenant could file. And, they would essentially be allocated whatever missed rent. Plus, you could actually apply for the next 2 months of rent in advance. So I do know people who did this and received $25,000, $30,000, $35,000 of back rent, which was great.
Yeah.
That money dried up very quickly.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The portal was closed. It was recently reopened. You can apply for it if you have people who are late. I don't know if any of that money is even left.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So that's where we're at. Now they did allow, which I was shocked by, I think everybody was, that they allowed the eviction moratorium to expire. But I'll tell you right now, there are things coming in the state legislature that are going to change the landlord-tenant rules for the entire state.
To whose
So-
benefit?
Who do you think?
I hope.
Dude, New
I'm
York
wrong,
is
But
You're wrong.
obviously, yeah.
It's the tenants.
tenant.
It's unbelievable.
It's
New York
always
is
the
a
tenants.
very, very extremely tenant
New
friendly,
York,
dude.
they-
It's
they
almost
keep you downstate.
it's scary.
It's
Prevent-
New
It's
York and
legitimately
California
scary.
neck and neck for most
It's legitimately
tenant-friendly.
scary. And
Which
California just posted the other day that they now want to raise their whole state rate, state taxes double. It was like 9%. Now they want to do 18 too. Like I don't know
Aren't
how
the
much
people
more these
fleeing that
states
state
think, bro.
right now?
I don't know how
bad
much
could
more
you
bad
fuck
shit
it
you
up?
could do.
How bad could you possibly? It looks like I am running. Who's voting for me? I'm
Well,
sick of this
today,
shit.
on today's podcast, Tony announces he's running.
Running for president.
when's the next election?
Yeah. I
Well,
don't know.
which one do you want to run for?
Dude, that's some tough
I'll
shit.
tell you what, I'm running for Texas or somewhere south.
Dude, yeah.
That's what I'm running for.
Well, there
So
are still a
fucking
lot
scary.
more
I'm running for the hills.
landlord
Yeah, true
friendly
that.
states, right? You go down south, you go to Georgia, Florida, Texas, they are much more landlord friendly.
Yeah.
Now, what's yet to be seen is the landscape. I mean, truthfully, I don't think we know how the last 24 months of stimulus, political activity, legislature, all of these laws that have been passed, we're not going to know the repercussions of all this stuff for
we're still in the
years.
Dude, we won't know
5,
for a
10,
decade.
15
We're
years.
still in the baby stages.
Yo,
Wait
they
till we
there's a law.
really feel what printing 40% of your money turns into.
Exactly.
That's gonna hurt.
Bro,
I know that.
Cuomo wants to spend, before he left office, for solar, because that's the industry I'm in. He wants to spend like $350 billion on offshore solar programs. And there's a whole article I was reading that, like, dude, listen, if they say $350 billion, that's really $400 billion or $450 billion. And bro, they've collected over the last 10 years, they've collected $22.7 billion from homeowners to fund other people to get solar. So $22.7 billion in 10 years. Now they want to collect $400 billion in the next 10, 20 years. Bro, it's like 35x.
And where's it going? Right in people's bills again? Same
like
thing?
same
It's
shit,
gonna come
yeah.
right out of your Senha
Bills and people and other taxes and things they're gonna do to charge and fund, and it's just like I don't understand. This is a whole nother topic, but I don't understand how politicians.
Corruption.
I don't know
It's
how
all
they don't see the
corruption.
topic of like we're fucking destroying the state,
because they're
and all they think of is, well, if we can get more tax revenue, we could help fix the state. But that's literally the complete opposite. They need to fucking stop doing
Well,
that.
the problem is that government in and of itself is completely inefficient in managing money.
Terrible.
Right? I mean, look at our look at the debt ceiling,
The debt.
right? Just look at how much
Credit-
money is owed.
Our credit score should mean nothing because
Well-
the United States has the worst credit score on the planet.
Yeah.
Like they've tapped into
What's
it
the U.S. credit score? It's got to be like what's the lowest?
like a 12.
350?
No, it's lower.
Yeah, for them they have like a 250.
They set the new benchmark.
But that's the issue, right? It's not a revenue issue; it's a spending issue.
Correct.
And it's just, when you start talking about politics, it's completely different.
All right, well, let's switch the
let's-
topic.
let's
We
not
talk
get
about politics
conversation
enough on
here.
this. All right, I'm going to go on to this because we're talking about that. I'll relate it to this. So we're talking about investment properties. I know you own some. You own some investment properties. I'm now finally trying to get into them. We've been speaking about it this whole time. But really, money is just debt to the government. So like the money in your
Federal
pocket, the money in
Reserve.
my pocket, it's created by debt.
Right.
So really the best way
It is a dollar bill is a bill
is
of debt.
Correct. So really the best way to accumulate more wealth is, it sounds kind of bad if you can do it and get good debt. Good debt is
Right.
a great
Don't
thing.
tell this to everyone.
I
'cause
know.
Some people don't know.
Yeah,
the
I got to give a
difference.
disclaimer before this,
Zach
right?
said to
Don't
run
get
up my
into
credit
debt.
card.
Don't get into bad
These
debt.
guys told me to go take out a 25%
Yeah.
interest credit card.
I just
and,
bought another car.
Goddamn.
Put
Shit it.
$50,000 on my Amex, and
Yeah, I have a problem with doing stuff like that. But
If your debt can afford to pay itself off.
correct. So the thing I was getting to is that good debt is the best way to create wealth. If you can get debt on real estate, if you can get
Right.
debt
A
on
debt that
some
can pay
people.
itself off.
So I know people taking debt to buy bitcoins, buy whatever, right? But
That's crazy. I wouldn't do all that.
listen,
don't
my whole
get-
point
don't
is
get margin calls.
yeah. My whole point is when you get good debt, you can seriously create a lot of wealth and you can get a really good velocity of money, kind of like the Burr strategy, because you're refinancing, you're taking your debt back
Yeah.
out, and you just keep moving that same money. You only needed whatever, let's say the 50 grand to start, and you can move that 50 grand through 10 properties. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You don't have to accumulate
Also,
more money.
Yeah, with the Burr, you could literally have an infinite return, right? You can
Infinite,
have it
yeah.
where you have $0 left in the deal and you own a property with equity and cash flow, and then you still have your initial principal investment.
All right, we're going to get into
And if
that
you
because I think
refinance-
that's a huge topic.
Debt is the only money you can't get taxed on.
Correct. It's
Well, that's
an
the other thing.
untaxable event.
Well, that's a very interesting thing. So I don't know if you've seen this, but a lot of billionaires, what they're doing now is they live off of, so they record no income, and this is how they pay no taxes.
Yeah.
They borrow loans
Yep.
using their stock or their assets as collateral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And refinancing of assets is not income. It's
Correct.
not- It's
Taxable.
free money.
It's
So
the
if you
smartest thing in the
refinance and you get $1 million and you live off $1 million for that year, you're not paying any taxes. And then now again, it's a hedge, right? There's always a caveat to that
Yep.
because the asset has to continue to appreciate.
Yep.
And that's how, again, talking about housing, that's how we ended up in 2008 was people made that gamble and the asset didn't continue to appreciate.
Correct.
However, there are ways that you can, to your point, there are ways that you can, better your financial situation. And it's really about leverage.
Yeah.
Right? That's really what you're talking about. Good debt versus bad debt. Good debt, buying a real estate property, investing in a business. Bad debt, going out and buying a Rolex.
Yeah.
You know what I
Terrible.
mean? Well, actually,
Never
no.
that.
Actually, right now, buying a Rolex.
Watches,
Right
cars,
now, it might be okay.
used cars, all that
You
shit
look at
might be
used car.
decent.
A car is the number one, right? Credit
Yeah.
card
Yeah.
debt, car debt. Those are the things that really burden you.
Yep.
And I mean, when you talk about financials, and a lot of the time, I mean, being in real estate, what's really interesting, talking about investments, is how many people I feel like real estate investment is having almost like a moment where so many young people are becoming interested in it because we are looking for alternatives to the typical 9-to-5 job. They're looking for ways to kind of invest in
boss.
exactly. And
I know so many kids, by the way, I know you just said the average is a 57-year-old woman.
Yep.
Right. And I've seen it for so long, but I feel like that's going to change. I know so many young people my age and younger who are going and getting their real estate license right now. Also, my mother is. So that fits.
Well, there you go. How's your mom? She's probably pretty
it's
close.
A little balance.
well, when you look at the real estate industry, there's always ebbs and flows, right? If you look at the number of, just to talk about real estate brokers for a moment, the National Association of Realtors, the New York State Association of Realtors will tell you 90% of realtors will never make one sale.
Yeah.
So 90% of people who get their license will never make the one sale,
Believable.
Yep.
which is understandable. I mean, the barrier to entry is extremely low. 75-hour licensing course, 2 multiple choice tests, and you're done.
Yeah.
Right? Now, when you go and get your license, they don't teach you how to be a real estate agent. They teach you how not to get in trouble. That's all they're teaching you. It's all case law. It's all, lead paint disclosures, agency disclosures. It's all, here's the paperwork that you have your client sign to not get sued. That's really all they're teaching you. They're not teaching you how to generate business. And so a lot of people will get in with misconceptions. I mean, I see it all the time. We have people come in, whether they join our team, whether they come into the office, and they come in super enthusiastic. Like anything else, it's the same thing as small business, right? What do they say? 90% of small businesses fail in the first 5 years, and then after that, the next 5, another 50%.
Yeah, your own small business.
You have to be an entrepreneur. All they teach you is how not to crash the car, but you got to be a good driver, and you got to know people and where you're going.
Exactly. So what's happening now, I think, is we're garnering a lot of attention, and a lot of people get interested and go nowhere with it.
Yeah.
And you can give them all the advice in the world, but there's so many different factors, and you could probably do a 2-hour podcast just on that.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are becoming interested in getting involved in real estate. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that now. There's a lot of great opportunities. And really, for anybody who wants to get involved in real estate, my biggest recommendation would be to find people like yourself who have experience and who you can talk to and who have done different types of deals and can kind of guide you through. Because you can buy a book, you can listen to a podcast, but as we've talked about, every situation is different. Yeah. And you really need that nuance to the conversation to be able to say, this is what you should do. If I were in your shoes, and, reading a book, it's like, oh, you should go buy, do a house hack, right? Live in one unit, rent out the others, use an FHA loan.
That's what I did.
It's just the generic stuff.
I was reading so many books and listening to all these guys' podcasts for the last 2 years about real estate investing. And I never felt comfortable until I talked to you, who's my friend who actually did it. Well, and we talked about logistics of it. I'm like, holy fuck. Okay, that's why the guy said that on that podcast. That's why this makes sense. But listening to it is
something a book could never do for you. So, I know Poughkeepsie.
Right. Localized knowledge.
Those books are just this is what you can do. Yeah. But I know this area. I would buy in this area.
Every book says don't buy in New York too. Yeah, every single book.
But I know this area. I wouldn't go down to Georgia and start buying properties because I don't know shit down there. I don't know the environment.
There's also something to be said too when you look at what people give as advice as the safe thing to advise people to do.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just going to tell you to do what everybody else is telling you to do because nobody's going to come back and be like, you shouldn't have said that, right?
Well,
you shouldn't have done that.
Saying to do, right?
Right, exactly. It's don't invest in New York. Well, it's okay, well, I live in New York.
Right.
Right? I'm not moving. Yeah. This is where my career is. This is where my job is. So you really, I think, am of the opinion that you need to find a way. Because look, in every market, people are making money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Everywhere you go, people are making money. You just have to find the ways to do it within wherever you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And finding a mentor, finding somebody who can kind of guide you through the process is really step one. Mm-hmm. Because they can say, look, everybody's situation is different. If you're a contractor with 10 years of experience and you have really good subcontractors and you've localized knowledge and you have a really good system that's running your business, you're much better off going and buying off-market deals at 50 cents on the dollar that need $100,000 in renovation because you can do the burst strategy. Right? Why buy something at the height of the market that's completely turnkey that somebody else has renovated for a premium?
Right.
It just doesn't make sense. But if you're a brand new investor who has no idea what you're doing and you're going to live in one unit and rent out the other and you're going to live for free, then buying that completely turnkey property is a no-brainer because there's no risk. Right? Because all of the potential hazards that could happen to you by taking ownership of a property Boiler goes
Yeah.
$10,000, $15,000, $20,000 out the window.
Right.
You need a new roof, $15,000, $20,000 out the window. And if you're going and buying a house hack and you're doing an FHA loan with 3.5% down, and you're buying it with $20,000 in your bank account,
Pretty hard
if
to fuck that up.
Well, exactly. But the thing is, if something goes wrong and you just spent all your money buying the house,
Oh, yeah.
now you're in
Well,
trouble.
And you're in the
If
game,
you didn't
too.
buy a
You're
property,
actually in the game.
if you didn't buy a
if you
property that
didn't-
was in good condition.
Yeah.
So these are the things that you really need to have someone to kind of guide you through the process.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I would listen. I haven't done either of them yet, but I would say if you don't know shit about real estate, it's probably a terrifying thing to try and go buy.
I'm trying to guide my
or
boy.
buy
I'm
buy
trying to
a
show him the
You're in
ropes.
buy
good
a
hands.
bad
Yeah, you
buy a
got
bad
that.
piece
I'll
of
show
real
you
estate
this
and
side,
fucking.
He's knows
Yeah.
what he's talking about. This guy.
But no, I'm saying it's bad. If I didn't know shit, if I tried to go on this on my own and I tried to buy a property that needed to be a gut renovated, bro,
Oh my God.
I wouldn't sleep for 6
I
months
could
until
see
it was
you in the
done.
building crying with no lights on because you can't afford the electric. What did
I'd be like,
do?
I wouldn't know
It's
what the fuck
scary.
to do, bro. I wouldn't know what to do.
It's scary. It's
So
not
if you have no
easy.
real estate knowledge, that's like trying to run a marathon without ever trying to run, or without ever
Yeah.
walking in your life.
Yeah, yeah.
It's insane. I couldn't imagine
I
trying
think
to do
that
that.
applies to anything. Don't get into anything without speaking to someone else who's got experience in it first.
Right, and there's so many gurus and mentors out there who want to sell you a program or sell you a, hey, come take my course. It's $500, and then at the end of the course, they're like, come take my next course. It's
Yeah.
$5,000,
It's all bullshit.
and it's $10,000, and it's like, do you actually make money in real estate, or do you just make money selling me a course?
Right.
And some of them know half this stuff, but they're not giving you what you really need to know. Like, I've been what the fuck's it called? Fortune Builders, I think
Yes.
it's called, or something like that, bro. Who hasn't been to that one? I was like 17. I went to that. It cost like $200 or something.
That's like a rite of passage.
Yeah, exactly. That's
know what
how you
that
get
is.
christened into real estate investing. And I went to that, and like, dude, they give you really general information, but
They're selling you.
it
dreams.
learns stuff, yeah. But it's like
I think
nothing.
that's interesting what you just
I
said.
got all the books and shit. I got like stacks of book this much from them.
How much is that?
$200. It came with the thing.
They're useful, right? In keeping your bed from falling over. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Dude, I don't
with
think
those
I've touched them ever. Actually, that's a
Exactly.
lie. I've touched them and read stuff in there, but it's just, dude, it doesn't matter what you
And
read
look,
in there. You
I'm
gotta
a-
go talk to somebody.
I do believe there's a place for all of that. Like, look, I read every single day. I have a very large book collection that audiobooks, podcasts, all of that. There's
Yep.
definitely a time and a place for all of that information, but nothing is going to, teach you better than having a mentor and then also having experience. The idea of a mentor is really just to accelerate the process, right? To help you avoid the mistakes that somebody else has made.
Yeah.
Because if someone can come
Yeah.
to you and say, if Tony comes to you and says, hey, don't do this, it just saved you, whether it be buying a bad property or making a bad decision in terms of spending unnecessary money.
Yep.
I see so many people who are brand new investors. They go in and they over improve their rentals.
Yeah.
They're putting in all of
wanna
these
make it look
high end
great.
finishes. And it's like then I have seasoned investors who have been around and been in the game for 40 years. And they're saying, okay, I want to do new lighting in my units, right? The rent as is $1,400. If I just do new lighting and nothing else, what is the new rent?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, now it's $1,500. Okay, so it's $100 a month more. That's $1,200 a year. What's that cost going to be?
Yep.
$5,000. Okay, so it's $1,200 over $5,000. It's roughly a 25%, 20%. It's return on my money.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, can I get 20% somewhere else, or is this a good investment?
Yeah.
And that's really just a very basic way of looking at it. And that's why I like investment real estate so much, is because when you deal with the regular, single family homeowner or whatever that is, owner occupant real estate,
Yep.
it's much more emotional,
Yep.
right? It's much more about the connection, the trust building, the comfortability, and it's much more of a process. Whereas with the investment side of things, it's all analytical.
Yeah,
It's
bottom
just
line.
numbers.
It's
It's
all bottom line,
calculations.
yeah.
It's literally just calculations and looking at formulas and deciding if that is worth the risk and the investment or not.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I think there is a time and place for all of that. But the best way to learn is with a mentor and from experience. And if you can condense the time that it takes for you to learn those things, you can accelerate the process. Kind of what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast with it being a time game, an accumulation game,
Yep.
right? It's just like anything else, compounding interest. It's compounding acceleration of your investment. So if you could buy one property your first year, 2 properties your second year, 3 properties your third year, you're going to be in a much better position than if you buy one property your first year, you made a bad decision, and now you're sidelined for 3 years trying to rebuild the income
Yeah,
to
what
buy
you
another
lost.
property.
So huge.
Yeah.
It's so huge.
Yeah.
Well, that was a pretty good podcast. What do you think, boys? This was pretty last minute. Jake, I called him last night at like 7 p.m. and he came here nice and bright and early.
Brought his A game.
Thank you guys
So
for having
Thank
me.
that was
you,
pretty
dude.
solid.
Yeah.
And,
Any ending notes on that?
No, I mean,
I think
he
that was a
fucking
good way
ended
to
it pretty
end it,
great.
is if
So
you're gonna get into the game, have a good mentor with specialized information
I
rather
agree.
than reading a book and thinking I know it all.
Call Tony, he'll mentor you.
Hell no. Don't bother
and
me.
listen, I'll end with the story. When I first tried to do this, I was just showing you. Remember I showed you the other day, Epic Homes. That
Yes.
video, that picture
Yeah.
I had. I tried to get into real estate like when I was like 17. I didn't know shit. I didn't have $1,000 in my pocket, and I went and had a logo design. I made Epic Homes LLC or some bullshit, and I had
What's
like the whole
return on
thing.
that? What'd you make
It was
that
on Fiverr, bro. I spent like $5. You know that app Fiverr where they design shit for you?
No.
But I went and did that. That's when I took the Fortune Builders program and everything. And then I went to like go try to find a deal, and I'm like, bro, what the fuck am I doing? Like, what do I even do? Like, who do I talk to? So 100%, if you could just find one person who's, they could just be a contractor. They could just be something where you at least get a little knowledge, and that'll usually grow a little bit. It doesn't have to be someone who's done 1,000,000 deals, but someone who's done one, or someone
Someone
who's a
who's
contractor.
further along in the process than
Than
you.
you
Correct.
That's
Yeah,
really
that's it.
all it is. I
Someone
mean,
who's ahead of you in the race.
and what's interesting is that's the same thing as if you own one property, 5 properties. Like I have mentors who are just friends of mine who own 15, 20, 30, units
Yep.
in the local area. And it's just when I have a question or I need something, I want to know what their opinion of something is.
Because they've seen it a
I
million
call them up.
times.
Exactly. And the big thing, honestly, is so many people are afraid to reach out and ask for help. And the vast majority of people that I know are willing to give their time to help people. Because if you're someone who's been in the game for 30 years, you know what it's like to be that 17-year-old kid
yeah.
who's like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do you like? What's the difference between gas heat and electric heat and
Yeah.
oil heat and all of these different things? Like very basic entry level things. It's good to have those people because they'll help you. They're willing to help you. They want to see you succeed because it is a collaborative business, right? So many deals are done, and most of the time, the best deals are done, behind closed doors. We don't know about those best deals because they're happening off market. They're happening between people who know each other.
Yeah.
If you have a 100-unit apartment complex in the city of Poughkeepsie, what's the point of putting it on the market? You already know the players in the area who are going to buy that.
Yeah.
They
No,
have specialized
nobody on the market is
information.
going to buy it. You need to-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or the brokers who are going to know the buyers who are going to do that. So you're not seeing those types of deals happen. You're not seeing the best deals happen because they're happening between the mentor and the mentee. I literally know people who are in that type of relationship and they bought their second, third, fourth property from their mentor.
Yeah.
Because it's a win-win relationship.
Yeah.
So it's really just all about finding that person to kind of help you along.
You got any real estate horror stories?
I mean, I could tell you about every day of my last week.
I love it.
Or what's the biggest challenge you faced in your personal journey?
Every day presents new challenges, honestly. I think it's more so than anything, being in the market, the biggest difficulty, and it's all based on the conversation, I think, too. Like, if you're working with buyers, right now it's really tough. It's really hard to be a buyer in this market. Just because you're getting outbid, you're dealing with it, and it's frustrating for us because, look, we have personal relationships with all of our clients. We want to see our clients, whether it's investors, succeed, whether it's homeowners, find that perfect house. And it is discouraging when you have a client who's been looking for 18 months and they've made 6 offers and they're not getting anything.
Yeah.
And they're great people and you want to see them succeed. You want to see them get that dream home. They get so excited just to disappoint them. So, in this market, I'd say that's been the biggest challenge, is working with people who that they're ready to go, that you want to help them out. And it's just, in some ways, you can't, right?
Yeah.
You can only make, you can only do so much.
To make a
and
deal
in
go
that
through, right?
thread, the other piece, for me personally, I would say the most challenging thing to do is work with a client who doesn't take your advice, right? I mean, there's all sorts of conversations with people regarding real estate brokers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not all real estate brokers are the same by any stretch. If you look at the rankings of any local MLS, you'll see that, in all reality, the majority of business 20, 30, 40% of market share can be held by literally 10 or 15 people.
Yeah.
You know, in Dutchess County, you might see the top 10, 15, 20 brokers doing hundreds of millions of dollars in business. And then the rest of the list, there's 3,000, 4,000 brokers, and it's like a fight over just a couple of transactions.
Yeah.
So it's not that everybody's created equally, right? But you have to have a broker who's adding value. And the whole point of working with a broker is to have someone to guide you through the process.
Someone with specialized information.
Exactly. We do this every single day. We see things all the time that, look, if you don't see these types of scenarios, I firmly believe that a broker's biggest value is not in finding houses. It's not in, you know, telling you whether or not what to pay. It's really problem solving. Yeah. It's knowing that obstacles are going to come up throughout the entire process and knowing how to solve those problems. Mm-hmm. If it's title issues, municipal issues, issues with the town, whatever that issue may be, you need to know how to navigate those problems when they come up. And if you can do that, you can put your clients in the best position to succeed. Right. So that's why experience is so important. So that's where a broker really adds value. If the broker can't help you solve the problem, if they're not willing to help you solve the problem, then you have a worthless broker. You have someone who's not doing anything for you. So for me, I look at that and say, my value is in clients taking my advice. Yeah. Right? And look, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes. Sometimes you may say, hey, offer this amount and you get outbid. It's just the nature of the business. Right. But giving advice, I mean, I could tell you so many times in the last year where I say, just in a bidding war, this is what the house is going to sell for. This number gets it done. And then they go 10,000 less than that number, they don't get the house, and then you see that the other offer was 5,000 less than what you told them, and they would have gotten the house if they had just taken your advice. And then these people are in the market for 18 months, 24 months. And so if you're going to work with a broker and you're going to hire someone to represent you, take their advice, listen to their guidance, and you know, it'll end up being the right fit for you. It'll work in your benefit as long as you're with the right person.
Trust your broker
in the long run.
If he's the right one.
Trust
this one.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's ultimately why we're here, is to try and help as many people as possible. I mean, that's truly why, whether it's myself, whether it's, you know, our team, the reason that we're so successful is because we have experience and we're collaborative. Again, we have, if I haven't dealt with something, we have 4 or 5 agents on our team. Somebody has dealt with that situation and can help us through that process.
Right. A lot of resources when you have a bunch of people.
Exactly. You got to have the answers to the questions, but you also have to know which questions to ask, when to ask them.
Right. All right. Well, that was awesome.
2
really
dudes,
insightful.
3 legs.
Listen,
man, what are you, 3 dudes, 5 legs right now? Whatever you want to call it. Like, subscribe.
Yeah. Check us out. Thank you for coming on.
No,
dude.
thank
I feel
you
like
guys
we
for
didn't
having
hear
me.
as much about you personally as we would have liked to, but maybe we'll get you on soon, and I'd like to do a follow-up on this and see how the market does change.
I'll come whenever you guys want.
We'll have to come back in like 12, 18 months and see what the market's going to be like then, and we'll have to have another conversation.
Absolutely. This will be interesting.
And hopefully I'll have a couple rental properties by then too.
freezing.
I could be in the game.
Well, the market's really bad, and we can't afford heat anymore.
Inflation's 25%.
Fucking shit. That's the most true thing.
You still have a computer and you're watching this, help. Thanks, bro.
Thanks for having me, guys.